Yes, and welcome back to Dance Jams with a new episode. We are going to talk about technique, the challenge of discipline and creativity. Of course, technique in dance, but I think that's quite obvious. Let me see if my good friend Ton is there and see if we can have a good conversation around this topic. Ton, are you there?
I'm there, Sean. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. We did it already in Dutch, but let's try to do well. If I say we did it in Dutch, that sounds weird, but I mean we did
Yeah,
this.
it sounds
We did
very weird.
that sounds very weird, but I mean we did this episode in Dutch because a lot of people might not know it. That we always do the same topic in Dutch and English, and Ton, you and I are Dutch boys.
Yes.
Um, but they are strangely enough not exactly the same. So if you happen to speak Dutch and English, I would definitely say listen to both of them. But anyhow, this is a new episode of Dance Jams Technique, the challenge of discipline and creativity. What do you think about that?
Yeah, wonderful item, Sean, or not item, theme. Technique, yes, that's a wonderful word, and you can use it for many other things. And but we will use it for specific for dancing. Yes.
Dancing. But yeah, knowing us, we probably will talk about where the word is coming from, how is it used, is it overused, is it underused, does everyone has the same definition, all these kind of things. And then what is it in our opinion? We'll talk about that too, right? So all these
Mm-hmm.
things we'll talk about. What is technique to you, Ton? Do you have a dis, do you have some sort of a definition of it?
Yes, in my book I have a definition about it,
Hmm.
and definition is the body parts what are moving and the body parts what are not moving. So I will give some context now a little bit. So the body parts who are moving and the body parts who is not moving with a specific um, muscle tension in awareness. And so when I do the whole context, the body parts what moves and not moves with a specific conscious of muscle tone. That's the English. I don't have it completely in the head, but in Dutch I have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I like that. I like that. I have it slightly different in my head for years, but that's actually how we found each other and saying, hey, we are very aligned in our approach of things. And not everything has to be, but I was thinking in Dutch. I said something like the conscious coordination of movements of body parts individually and the body as a whole, right? and
Yeah.
and that's technique. If you can consciously know what you do, and then you can improve on these things, obviously. But Ton and I, let's get that out of the way. Ton and I typically don't want to say this is good technique or bad technique, right? It's every
Don't exist, Sean.
yeah, exactly. So we talk always about the process. You can say, okay, this is where you are today, and then we can improve. But yeah, so that's
Oh, okay. I will write it or read it
yes, the
because in
English
the
one.
book
Hmm.
English one, yes.
Good.
And dance, physical or mental, it's the body parts moving and or not is moving, the 10 parts of the body and the coordination them with a month of conscious muscle tension in order to achieve a certain result.
Hmm. Okay.
In Dutch, I have it in my mind, but not in English.
Well, that's okay because you are a Dutch boy.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfectly fine. Strangely enough, you and I both the experience, and when we started to dance. Besides, then of course we do, and we both started in the ballroom dancing. By the way, so that you know where we coming from. Later on, we both started to do other things too. But in my case, when I started to give a little bit more interest in dancing, my teachers immediately started to talk about technique. And then you have, according to the technique, you have to
Yeah,
do to the side and slightly forward. Okay.
exactly the same, Sean.
I said, okay. I said, well, I mean, I understand why they want to do that, by the way, that it's not to negate what that person was. But I immediately had the question, is that technique that I know now I have to put it to the side and slightly forward? Or is it the skill that I can put my foot to the side and I can do it a little bit more to the forward and know how to do that? What is the technique? They never explained that to me. They always said, no, this is how it must be. And there was there is a famous book. I still use it, by the way. It's called The Latin Technique. Do you have it by the hand, Tom?
Yes, I have it. I have it by the hand. I
You
will
said you had
show
the
it
same
to you.
experience. Can you tell a little bit
Yes,
how they did that to you? Yeah, famous book for ballroom dancers who do the Latin discipline. Also, when you do an exam, you have to use these books, right, to do an exam, right?
and in ballet you have similar books like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Even notation wise, they kind of, ballet goes even further notation wise.
Yes, 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 absolutely. That's and
Mm-hmm.
you have different styles also. Vaganova,
Mm-hmm.
say style.
Streams or
The
streams, yeah. The
streams, yes,
yeah.
the American stream, the United Kingdom stream, the French stream. Ah,
So
it's
how was it when they start to use the word technique in your case? What did you think?
they spoke mostly about the feet. That's also and the
Yes.
legs
Yeah.
and the hips and the rib cage. They never spoke about arms, seldom about shoulders and head, never about speak about hands and fingers. Mm. So
And never, never, ever about muscle tension.
never, never.
Ever, never, ever. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we used it from my martial arts background,
Mhm.
but I've never heard someone talk about it,
No,
like
never
we think
ever.
about it until I met you.
Yes, and tonus also not muscle
With
tonus.
yeah,
Never. It's muscle tension
yeah,
actually.
that's
It's
even a better
uh,
word actually.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's from the
yeah.
anatomy side, the tonus, and that's specific muscle tension. And you have
Mm.
three of them,
Can you
Sean.
explain? Can you explain the muscle tension?
Yeah, you have the basic one, what
Hmm.
keeps you that you can sit and stand.
Hmm.
Then you have the one, the tonus where you can move.
Move to make a movement. Yeah.
Yes. So we will not use the difficult words for it now or the challenging words. And you have the third one. It's more specific that you can make different dynamic qualities. It's like a hierarchy,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
You start the first one you have always. No, actually it's four of them. Yeah, four.
Yeah.
Four
You have
different muscle tonus.
the complete relaxation state.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, but here is what I started to discover, Tom. It's a slightly different route. If you don't want to go there, then we need to do a special thing on muscle tension and tonus, I guess. But I
Yes.
noticed that a lot of people, even to normally stand up, um, use actually too much tension.
In the ballroom Latin world, absolutely. Even in the hip hop competition world,
Yeah.
they
Uh,
mostly they have one flavor, and
Yeah.
that's
Too, and
hit
it's,
it
and it's a
and
little bit
go.
too much. Too
Yes,
much. Yeah.
in the competition. But if you do like
Social.
how they call it, electric boogie, they have
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
different one. Yeah, and you have gliding and sliding. I don't know how you call of waving. That's you have so many different flavors in the hip hop, and yeah, all of that flavors has a different use of conscious muscle tone,
Yeah.
and you need to practice that because and technique is also something like that. You practice that certain technique, but actually it's to like. to do some trick. Actually, you learn a trick because everything what you learn in dancing is you learn it, and it's not came by themselves.
Yeah, which is a part of technique then, right? We always
Yeah.
say, or no, we, but I always say knowledge, ability, and skill. And sometimes we only talk about skill as if that is technique, and skill is so broad that that doesn't work either. But without knowledge, without thinking about it first.
Mhm.
Um, so that in your book Jam is also an important topic. You have to think about it first before you
Yes.
execute and do. Yeah.
When I tell the technique in the jam,
Mm-hmm.
people get
Oh.
in shock mostly because actually I have only three actions, and when I say to them I have three actions,
Mm-hmm.
uh, then they ask me what actions. Yeah, I said bending, stretching, rotating, or a nicer word maybe, flexing, extending, and rotating. And in the 10 body parts, because you do it not with all body parts at the same moment, because that would be incredible advance, multi advance. No, these are the three actions what you can do, and all the three actions you can put in the 10 actions of Laban.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So in our definition, so that is, let's say, a basic technique to understand that you only have those three ways of moving. But then, in how many ways could you use those three things, Ton?
Oh, oh, that's unbelievable. Millions ways you can do it.
Million
Ye-
ways.
yes,
Yes.
if you have 10 body parts and you can bend them, extend them, or flex them, extend and rotate, you can do this in all directions. And you can even, I can bend my arm or flex my arm, and I don't see it in the camera. I flex it, and when I flex it, I can also rotate it.
At the
Then you
same
have
time.
already two. It's composed. I call them composed actions with one body part, singular body part with a composed action. And so when I bend my arm and I rotate it at the same moment, then it's already a composed action because it's two. And but you cannot bend and and extend the arm at the same moment. You can
Mm.
extend the arm and uh, rotate them. That's possible, but
At
so
the
you can
same.
only
Yeah.
compose it with two. Three, it's not possible. But three is possible if you compose the body parts. So one body part, and I move my head. That's one. But when I do also my shoulders, and when you look in the camera or you listen it and you do turning your head and the shoulders up and down, then you have already two body parts, and that this is composed. And one is turning or rotating, and the other one is bending. So then you have also a composed action, but they are asymmetric. And why they are asymmetric? Because when one is when the shoulders are rotating and the head is rotating, yeah, then it's symmetric. But these are all new terms.
Yes. Yes, we
Yes.
are. Yeah, you have to get used to it, into these terms. But luckily, Ton, we use them quite often. Sometimes we explain them a little bit more in the context of technique. I mean, Ton used also the word conscious, right? You can also use deliberate, right? That's also a nice English word. I deliberately move only one body part, in this case, in an extending and rotating way at the same time. To be able to do that, yeah, that needs conscious. You need to think about that, which you can only do if you understand what's behind these movements. A lot of these things we can do, but this is kind of chaotic, and it actually is nothing to do with consciousness. And so that's important. So I saw you doing all these things. You always talk about that muscle tension and tonus needs to be in there. Why is that important, Tom?
The tonus is important to make the dynamic changes. If you can make a dynamic change, you can only do that with a certain conscious muscle tone, what gives a certain result. And when you have a certain result, then it would, because dynamic will say a change constantly. It's never the same. Otherwise, it would be more flat and it
Yeah,
would be the same. It's the same when I now talk to you and I would bring my voice down more quiet and I would speak for 1 hour like that. I think you listeners, now I change my voice, you would not stay 5 minutes awake. So you would fall asleep probably.
but yeah, that would be a kind of a nice exercise for to listen to people, because if I would go into the same voices tone and I answered also like this, then we are actually in a singular tone together,
Yes,
synchronized. But I could choose
we
to,
don't gonna
yeah,
do that,
but
Sean.
we can ask Ton to ask like to talk like that, and I talk in a different dynamic. Come on, Ton, let's do that.
Yes, yes, I will try that, Sean. You will talk differently, and I talk in that way. I
Yeah,
don't know.
luckily I
I
talk a lot
don't
faster
know.
than Ton.
Yes,
So
yes, that's really dynamically, Sean. That's too
that's really
much.
funny. But
Yeah,
I
that's
still talk in the same dynamic.
yes for me. Yes, but it's still the same, and I'm too in the same. I think we are boring, Sean,
Then
when
you
we
would be
speak like
boring,
that.
because it's not,
Yeah.
because even if I talk it like this here really fast, I can do that because I do that all the time, and they always think that I talk too fast. But even then,
Oh,
most people would actually stop listening to us because I really talk in the same dynamic. Does that
oh,
make
you
sense?
have that yes, yeah, you have that beautiful sound effects in your machine. Maybe you
Yeah,
can put one there
I
to
can.
make a break there.
I can to make a little. To make the need to do a little bit like
Yeah.
stop
Whoop.
like that. Yeah. Okay. We
Yeah,
waved the
stop. That
wind.
was the magic one.
The medic to put us outside, but you can see
Yes.
the voice can sometimes, if I want to emphasize something, then I suddenly talk a little bit more staccato because now you listen to me more. Or I can just be a little bit more friendly, say, Tom, I know something happened to you today, can you tell me more about it? See,
Yes.
I put more empathy in my voice. Now the way
Yes.
we use our voice now, Tom, that the different ways of use the voice is not only the strength, it's all these variations. You could also translate
Yes.
that into dance, right? Into the body.
Yes.
Eh,
Absolutely. And then your dance will constantly change because your
Yeah,
dynamic change. But the dynamic can only change if you change your muscle tonus or your muscle tension.
nice.
Otherwise, it cannot
Mhm.
change.
But
So
what do we often hear then, Ton? So I play that student now, Ton. But Ton, what is the correct way to do this then?
don't exist because each person has a different mind. Each person has a different use of muscle tension and also a different history where they grow up. So everything is holistic and it has, yeah, one and the other, it helps each other. You cannot put it on one point. And the bending, stretching, and rotating, this is a choice of an creator how to create that bending, stretching, rotating. But if you follow somebody, you need empathy, emotional empathy, how somebody feel, but also how we look, and you try to imitate that. And if you imitate that, you try also to bend or rotate at the same way the teacher will do. And once you have experience with that one, the most beautiful is to make your own decisions in the bending, stretching, and rotating with a month of muscle tension, how conscious you are about that one. And then you get an artist because you decide what you will do with that body parts in which space and in which time. So we call it space time, the four dimension.
Yeah. So is that the super long definition of technique, or is that just was that everything included? What part
Oh,
is the technique part?
it's even more, Sean. Technique. It's not only no. The short definition is which body parts you move and not move with a conscious of muscle tone. What gives a certain of result.
Hmm.
That's the short one. In my maybe other people have a other definition, but it's also short. In all the 10 body parts, this is what I forgot. Sorry, guys, but that's important to say because your body is that instrument, and how important technique is also, because you have to know that technique comes from the Greek word techne, and techne means it comes from the art, and the art created the technique, and you not create the technique for to create the art. Maybe now is that because you have a certain style.
Hmm.
When you think on Van Gogh, and when he painted 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, I think it's 120 years ago. I think he died 1905 or somewhere else in that area, in that time. And he didn't sell his paintings because nobody wanted to buy it because it was so strange result. But he painted it with such a different technique and use of colors that the result was completely different, and people needed time to use to it. And after when he was dead, the family sell the pictures and they get a lot of money for it. That's a little bit the story. But at that time, his technique for to paint was really different than others. And then you can now imitate that one. Then you use the same bending, stretching, rotating actually, because otherwise you cannot uh, make the same result how you
Yeah.
want to do that. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So, but in I'm not a painter, but my brother was an artist. He was a painter mostly. He was also a little bit of a sculptor. If I would ask him what's technique in the painting, then he probably would say something is how they use the brush or they use a knife. Some people, paint with a
yeah,
knife. And then he start to add, what materials you use, and then he probably would say to me, each material requires a different set of technique. So for me, let's pretend that I'm not a dancer and we have not talked about this a lot. Then I think, oh yeah, I got that. It's how you use your material, and that could be the materials, not only the paint, but it's also the canvas or whatever you paint on. How would that
yes,
how would that be in dance, Tom? Because that's for
yeah.
me clear, right?
I give you yes, I give
Yeah.
you one question back. What is the material of the dancer?
Yes, that's the body. So
Yeah,
that's how we talked about it,
that's the
right?
whole
Yeah,
answer.
it's the body.
That's the
So
whole answer, Sean.
yeah, and
The
sometimes
body.
sometimes it's the prop. Sometimes it's a prop.
Yes, if you have a prop,
Mm-hmm.
um, like a chair
Mm-hmm.
or like a stick,
Stick.
then
Yeah,
yeah,
or a
then
different
how?
surface, right? A different
Yes,
surface, because we always think it's about, because we come from a ballroom, a dance background. A lot of people think it's always about the same surface where
no.
they dance on, but it's absolutely not true,
You
of
can
course,
also
right?
dance vertical.
Right,
and you
vertical.
can dance not only inside but also outside, and you
Set.
can dance vertical, but you can even also dance upside down
Yeah.
if you have the right equipment.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
so that weighs in, of course, right? But okay, so that's part. Your question was okay. What do you dance with? Primarily, of course, your body.
yeah,
That's where it
primarily
starts.
and bending, stretching, rotating, and that's really important to say that. But material could also be water, and what
Mm-hmm.
you can do with water, how creative you are with water, but you can be also in the water and use the water as, but still it stays with your body because you can only bend, stretch, rotate, or flex, extend, and rotate with a certain amount of muscle tension in your 10 body parts, and how you combine them all 10 with maybe an extra material, prop, then it needs a certain technique too. But you can move only the prop by bending, extending, or flexing, extending, and rotating. Otherwise you cannot move the prop.
Yeah.
How you want to do that, or you need some electric things in it. But still, you can move it only when you push a button. And when
Yeah.
you push the button,
So the
what you will do, you bend it or
yeah,
flex it
or yeah,
in a
that
different
depends,
word.
right? That's an uncommon
Yes,
way of pushing a
or
button,
yeah,
but
but you have to push somewhere on, Sean.
you have to
Otherwise,
you have to move
otherwise it
something.
will not move.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how far you also think, um, it comes always back on flexing, extending, rotating.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and then it's what you do. So what I do is my arm, I extend it, I do it to the camera, yeah, yes, and then how I do it, how is then more the dynamic part, and what I do is more my actions.
Yeah.
And how I do it, it's also actions, because then it's the bending, um stretching, and rotating. It's more smaller. When I do my head like that and ticking, tick, 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 it's all bending, bending.
It's all bending, but that's where we add a what we call then a dynamic quality to it,
Yes.
right? And then so then you can add, a lot of people say if they, talk about dynamics, nothing is right and wrong, just that people know what we are coming from. It's not only about time. It's not only about fast or slow,
Yeah. No, 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 no.
which is a relatively term anyhow. Uh,
Yes, yes.
so so that's a whole, but that's also part of the dynamic quality, I think, Tom. Of not, I
Yes,
think I
absolutely.
know, of course, and then of course, if you traditionally go back to Laban, Rudolf Laban was one of the first dancers who start to write down about dance theory. So let's explain a little bit what that is. Right, has a huge influence specifically on in the beginning on classical dance, later on all dances. There's an institute in London called the Laban Institute, where
And
you
New
can
York and
study.
Sean.
Huh? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And in
yeah.
New York,
Oh,
of
yeah,
course,
and
yes.
in New York, that became, of course, a big movement, a big educational part of dance. And then he also talks about space, where you use. In Gem, we use space too, but we use it slightly different. We talk about pathways and stuff like that as well. Where are we in
Yes.
space? And we approach it, and we is from the dance Gem, we approach it also from a proprioception point of view. Where do you know how? What is your awareness of your body parts in the space that you are dancing?
That's also technique, Sean. The
And that's all.
space is what we do,
Yeah, yeah,
and the dynamic, or the time, space time, and the time is how we do it. You could also see it like that.
yeah.
So, but you cannot separate them. They are one unit, space time as a one unit. And we will do a podcast about that one. Very interesting. And yeah, actually, everything comes back to bending, stretching, rotating. Different word: flexing, extending, rotating. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that I like that, Ton, and it's, I mean, that's really when we start to connect really well. Just to we have a tendency, Ton and I, you in dance jams. That's why we are called the dance jams, by the way. But maybe you are one dance jams, and we're all, jams.
absolutely.
But we like to first break everything down to see if we can find the simplest principle, which Ton was brilliant in, because I tried them all. I said, no, no, Tom, there must be more than bending, stretching, and rotating. And then said, Tom, there's only one more that some doctors use, and that is called side bending. But okay, that's very, very thin. You can actually only do that with your finger, side
Mhm.
bending, and some people can do it with their head. I'm not very good at that. Yeah, some people, some culture can do it really well. But this is your traditional side bending. If you can see it, if not, but you can try it at home a little bit. And Tom wrote a wonderful book. He would never call that a technique book. Yeah,
No,
he would never
no,
call it a
no.
technique book, but it starts with a very simple principle: is you can actually, with each body part, and then identify 10. That's also for simplicity reasons, but that makes it very clear that all those 10 body parts can do maximum three of those movements of actions.
Yeah,
Not all
well
body
said.
parts can do all three, but they can do at least, you know, they can at least do one or two. So
And how you coordinate them,
that
that makes the different flavor.
that makes a different flavor. But in our opinion, then you get to different layers of technique. That is so there is never one technique. That's to begin with. Now there is function, of course, if you dance in a certain style, to have that all described. Of course, there is nothing wrong with it. We challenge the word technique in this context. Yeah,
Mhm.
we actually, but that would be a horrible title, if the book would called foot placement in foot and leg placement and use in Latin dancing. But that would be a more correct title, Tom.
Absolutely, because in that book
Yeah,
or these books, what they wrote here,
yeah,
fantastic book,
it,
actually, all of them.
yeah.
So, but it's only footwork, most of
Mostly, yeah,
them.
mostly, yeah, 80%.
And
And
the most nice thing is they call it the technique of Latin dance. You could also say the technique of ballet. But if you not explain the technique and you don't give context for the book, that's quite weird for me, because the whole book is about the technique, but what is actually technique? They didn't explain it.
yeah,
That's quite funny.
not even in the context that they use it, but because that's okay too, right? Saying, hey,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
use,
yes.
so like you do very, I think, very well in your book, is, the way how I use it in this book is this. And then we used a lot of these terms very consistent. But that doesn't mean if you want to use it in another lesson, and that's also what I would like to stimulate people to. If we use certain words, and other people, just ask them, what do you mean with that word? I mean, I was immediately saying to my teacher, if you say technique, can you give me the definition of technique? Well, yeah, yeah, that's how you place your foot, and that's legally know how you know to turn your foot. It's 1/8 of it, and that's all technique, And if you know, and I was thinking, okay, I accept that it's your definition of technique.
Correct, Sean.
That's how
That's
I did it, but I was a nasty student, I guess.
uh,
That's how I did. And by the way, I that I have the greatest respect of someone who tried to write down these defined figures. That's another word that you will hear a lot between Ton and me. Is the book, the Latin technique that he was holding up. And you also see that in classical ballet, that's all what is defined, but it doesn't give you the freedom of dance. And here comes, I think, the biggest thing that Ton and I are behind. The technique it's written in books like that actually restricts you because now you think that's the only way you can dance. The way Ton and I try to describe technique should give you freedom, should
Yes,
give you choices. Whether you use
correct.
that to create freedom, that is actually also a choice, by the way.
Yes, technique is framed, and actually, we think technique it's has an evolution. So if technique would be static, it stays at the same point, always the same. And dancers are artists, Sean, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But if they want to do the same like somebody else did in the technique,
yeah.
then it's okay.
They
But it's
come up.
how you use it and how the evolution is there. If you look to ballet and the technique of pirouettes was maybe for 100 years ago, it was two turns. That was the maximum. Now they make seven turns in the same time. So the balance, the power, everything is developed, and also the coordination of everything what they use. And still, it's not standing still. So the same technique had an evolution.
Yeah, yeah. I think so many simple examples in the world. If technique is not evolving, right, we probably would still live in a hole in the ground. Yeah,
Yeah.
because at some point in time they start to say, hey, maybe if we stack a few stones on top of each other, and so the stacking of stones, you could see that as a technique because some people
Mhm.
were better in stacking the stones, and then other people said like, hey, we need to put something in between those stones so that they don't shift. That's another
Mhm.
technique. Now we build buildings of 200 stories high. The same thing as, when they started to, invent the wheels. Saying, oh, hey, if we put two wheels next to each other, something in between, we can make a cart. And then they start to, if we replace the horse by an engine, we have. So that is how technique involves. So if we and so this book that was Tom holding up was written in 1960 by Mr. Walter Ladd, and that is how the technique was then. I think
Yes.
he would never wanted us to do exactly the same then, but learn from the technique, master it, but then move on. And then you will see that some techniques are actually also becoming obsolete. Now, in body
Yes.
movement, you arguably would say actually nothing becomes obsolete. You can only add on because that would be more excited. But that for me is always a simple way of doing it. And you and I had this example. If we just have a lot of material and we just start to stack them up, we might create a pretty creative house. But there's no technique behind it. So then one gush of wind and it would fall over. To make it a house with certain conditions so that it can withstand rain, you need a little bit more technique.
Yeah, you can work systematic on it, Sean,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
you come also to a certain point.
Hmm.
But once you have this point, you reach that point, then you don't want to stay on it. So try to get more diverse, and your dancing would absolutely or your technique would absolutely improve if you would do also other sports like judo, like football, like basketball, so that the body used to the different motoric
Movable. Yeah.
ways how they move,
Yeah.
and then you could also you get more a mover, because it's important to get a creative mover also, to get so much as possible to develop that technique, because otherwise it gets static, and when you get static and you not reach a point further, how you want to inspire people when they look to you.
Yeah.
So you you have to have certain other things. So I think technique, not I think, because when I say I'm not sure. I'm sure if you have to practice your technique. That's really important, but till a certain point. I danced. I don't know how long. Latin dance competition, maybe 30 years, and I practiced 30 years Roomba walks, and then I was fed up. No, I think 20 years I danced, and after 20 years, I thought to myself, what I want to know more about the Roomba walk or about in the ballet when I do what a relevé or plie. It's okay to practice it, but there comes a point where you have to go further.
Yeah. Yeah, and so a lot of that's nicely said, Tom, because most of these movements are the defined, like a Roomba walk or a releve or a plie,
Yes.
are in our mind always a combination of more than one movement. And
Yeah.
so, and it's a process. You cannot stop a Roomba walk and say, okay, now you have a perfect. No, you have a stand. That's not a
Yeah.
that's not a walk. A walk is a moving word, right? Walking, right? So it's so that's also something that kind of that's kind of strange, because it's actually just a series of movements that you make, and if you see it that like way in that actions, then you can manipulate that movement. Now, what we as a judge, or in the Latin word consider as a good Roomba walk, and I do it on purpose, light, which is all relative words. Okay, maybe that is defined. It's actually not exactly defined, but maybe that's defined. That's fine if you want to judge that. Like we call this trembling, and that's okay. Um, but the scary part is that everyone is trying then to make that same movement and believe that there is one perfect way of doing that. And you see that in classical ballet, the same thing, right? And you see that where where in a way a Roomba walk is just a different form of walking. And I always ask, are there other ways you can walk too in the Roomba? And they never understand the question. And then I walk like an idiot, say, okay, but that's not a Roomba walk. I said, no,
Mm.
I ask you, can you walk in other ways in the Roomba?
Yes. And this strange thing is, Sean, doesn't
Mhm.
matter which dance form you do, hip hop
Doesn't
or
matter.
ballet, doesn't matter, or ballroom dancing or Latin dancing, doesn't matter, ballet, because each person give a different explanation what if they teach them what they do with their body, and then it confuse them many times,
Oh, yeah, that's
and then you
amazing.
think in right and good,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah, I
not.
like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that direction that you took, Tom.
Yeah.
Because we create something that you actually can, have different opinions about, but then they pretend that you cannot, which is very confusing for me too. But if you go back to what you wrote in the jam about these three body parts, you can actually not debate it, right? There is nothing to debate about. But once we say how many different ways, how can I bend my arm? Then you can come up something. Oh, now we are making choices, and that's, I think, the fundamental difference of what we're talking about.
Yes. Well, I give an example, Sean,
Hmm. Hmm.
also from the 10 body parts.
Yes.
Say I want to do a walk, because a walk you can do in the hip hop, but you can also do a walk in the ballet. So I can let fall my body, and suddenly my foot and my leg will come under the body because I'm falling. So I'm
Yes.
falling and it goes under me. But I can also go forward and push me from the back leg, and I bring my um, free leg first forward. So I can also, before I walk and my head would be down, I stretch first, go up, then my body go forward, and then my foot come. But I can also reorder it. So the bending, stretching, and rotating stay the same, but which body part goes first, that could be also different.
Yeah.
And this is quite confusing for people who have lessons in technique. And one teacher A said this, and teacher B said this. And then, okay, and you are in the middle now and think, okay, well, what I must do now. So actually go back and understand the principles. Which body part I will bend first, which body part I rotate, or I bend and rotate. So ask yourself always the questions about, and have a conversation with your body. What is my body doing in bending, stretching, rotating? This is really, really important that you ask yourself the questions instead that the teacher said, do like this, do like that, do like this, and you try to follow it. You come home and you forgot the order what he said. Okay, he said first leg, or he said first you go in the hip. Where I bend first, or what was it now? And then you write it down, and still you cannot reproduce it what he said. So it takes many, many lessons to follow the style of that teacher. Cost maybe a lot of time, energy, and money probably.
Yeah.
So I would do that lesson, but I would make a video, and then I would really say clear this and this and this order, this and this bend, rotate, and stretch. So go much more slower through it if you want to develop that certain of technique from that person. This is what I would advise, and don't get blind in it, because it's each person has a different body. Your body has a own language, your body. The teacher has a different language in his body,
Yes.
and to get
Yes.
these two languages
Yeah.
together takes
Yeah.
quite a month of time
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
duration.
What I liked about this Ton, and also when I was studying Laban, even if I would go to let's say a little bit more traditional ballet or dance teachers, I unconfused myself. I said, okay, this is how you see that, and that's fine. I can make now the choice whether I follow what you do or not. That's still my choice. Even if they would say, Tom, this is the only way to do it, then I think, no, this is, you believe that's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
how
when
I,
you yes, and
yeah,
when you believe that this only the way, then the other ways not exist,
exactly, exactly.
and
That's,
then you will be static, and
you will be
then
static.
you will reach a point where you not will grow anymore.
Yeah. So in the beginning of that adventure, I had the tendency to argue with those people. Now thinking, okay, no, maybe there's still a lot to learn. I just don't agree that's the only way, but that's fine. You know, if he wants to believe or she wants to believe that, then that's okay too. So, and that is the beauty of understanding technique in this way to the smallest part possible, right? And if you think about car technique as well, if you see that's a very technical person, this person can take the car apart in the smallest parts possible and put it back together, maybe even
Mhm.
create a different car from it if you if you're very creative, right? And it's still
Yes.
working. So 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 that is I think a special skill to look at a movement and see. And Ton and I do that very often. Ton, we look at a movement, and we try to first see all these different parts and then see, okay, how does this person put it together. We very often see, Ton, that where you used in your definition conscious, that maybe three, four body parts were moved in a conscious way, but the rest was kind of
Yeah.
unconscious. And
Yeah.
so
Correct, Sean.
still classified as having a real good technique. And let's put it this way, let's be nice, we put our question mark behind it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we want to challenge people to say. Can you also see all these 10 body parts moving in these incredibly different ways possible? And can you see if this dancer is doing this conscious on all level? And trust us, that is really hard. We practice it almost every day, Tom, and some things are just still incredibly challenging to do it for all 10 body parts in a coordinated way, conscious for all. That's really hard. Try three, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, I speak always from you defined your body parts in bending,
Yeah.
stretching, rotating in space
Mhm.
time
Yep.
with a
Yep.
certain amount of
Of
body
course.
tension or muscle tension
Yeah.
uh, in a conscious way. And if you can do that, you can move even one finger or five fingers singular. I call them singular. Then, of course, it's five fingers. But both fingers and head it's already composed, and I can define them, but I think also on the other body parts to keep them on the spot in space. And that's also it needs a lot of coordination in your head to keep it still. Of course your body parts are always moving, but they look still because you perceive them as still.
Yeah.
But something else is important, Sean, what I
Okay.
wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, actually, the alignment in the body parts, it's also a kind of technique. How
Yeah.
you alignment them in the, I call it in three. I have three of them. I have the posture lines. They are defined, like in ballroom dancing or Argentinian tango or in the ballet. There are also defined body posture lines. I have body lines. They're actually free lines. You can make them whatever you want, but you define them for yourself. So you not follow the general rules what you have in ballet or in the ballroom dancing. And then you have the action lines. What is between from A to B when you move? So the other one, posture lines, it's actually more static in a space, and the posture lines also more static, but the action lines are more in time, and then move from spot from A to B with a certain body line or posture line. And this is really interesting to see it like that because the alignments between the body parts are very important, which lines you create in that one and through space and time. I think that was really complicated, I think, for the listeners. I think, Sean. What you
No,
say?
no, no, no. It is literally almost opening what we say in English a can of worms, right? It is almost impossible to talk about these things so individual because that's kind of almost impossible because the moment I do one thing, I immediately move something else. It's always in relation to, right? Even if I only move my arm now, so a lot of people focus not of course on the arm, but I have to focus also that I keep all the other 9 body parts. We'll repeat them at some point in time. That I keep them still, and that keeping still of the other body parts is equally a technique as moving as that first body part, and that is where consciousness comes in, because that holding the other 9 or holding 8 body parts still, you will find that is that is actually very specific. And if you do it then what Tom just added with in a certain alignment, right, we call that, that could be a posture line, for instance. It's a certain alignment of body parts, it's not more than that. uh, then it becomes even harder because now I have to keep them still in a certain alignment. I
Yeah.
think I think that's another way of phrasing it. I'm not sure if I made it simpler, Tom, to be
Uh,
honest. But
well, we the nice thing is we understand both each other. So that's already weird, Sean.
yeah,
But
that's already weird. Yeah, that's already
yeah,
weird.
yes, yes. I hope
But
your listeners
yeah,
understand it. But we had
yeah,
also a podcast about the proprioception, Sean.
yeah, that's a good one
That
to
was
start with.
podcast number 22. I just looked which number it was. Our podcast 22, we spoke about the
Proprioception.
proprioception. And
Yeah,
this is the awareness
yeah,
of your own property, that's your body,
yeah,
and how you use it in space time, in bending, stretching, rotating. It's a whole podcast about that one. And this is really, really important for all the dance forms
yeah,
and styles, to be aware of that
yeah.
property. That's your own
Property.
body.
Yeah, property.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, and since it's a constant change, specifically, if you listen to what Ton said, and we probably do a whole podcast on space time as itself because it's another huge topic. But even if you make the same movement, but you go two steps further in the room, you actually have changed it already. So, in this case, from a technical point of view, Ton and Jean, we use muscle memory completely different as well, because to make your muscle memory is also pretending that all the circumstances that you dance in need to be exactly the same. Otherwise, this whole muscle memory falls very quickly apart because everything changes the moment you do it at another moment, in another space, with another shirt on, with more or less food in your body. Everything changes. So yes,
Yes,
you need to be able to what we call that manipulate immediately to your choice.
absolutely. And you speak then about muscle memory, that the technique will be fixed.
Oh
And
wow, yes, Tom, that's a nice connection that we need to put back into because those two that makes sense, right? If you think that technique is fixed, then you want to do muscle memory, and then you actually discover that that actually cannot happen.
no, but you
That's a
need the muscle memory till a certain point,
it's absolutely
and and then it's in that body. What
yeah,
the most nice thing is,
yeah,
you are one of a kind, and you will make
yeah,
something incredible,
yeah.
super duper artist way,
Yeah.
something unique from
Yeah,
it.
beautifully said. Like mirroring or just image that mirroring someone has a function, right? In your training in your practice. Anyhow, this was a wild podcast.
Yes, yes, yes. But I wanted to say something more. Your
Hmm.
technically skills, you have to develop, and you can only develop them through diversity, and not just keep it always the same. And you need your mobility, your power training to improve that also, but learn also to variate also these skills, because if you keep it um, the same and you want only more power, only more. So for dancing, it's important to increase your power, your mobility, but also be conscious of your breathing, inhaling, exhaling, also very important. Your partner work, if you work with a partner, and your partner work with the music you have, that's also a certain of technique, how you perceive that music and which elements you take out of it,
Yeah,
because the music developed also by a certain coordination of bending, stretching, rotating. Otherwise, you couldn't make that music. How is that possible?
yeah. All these terms
Yeah.
come equally back there. Well,
Yes,
you
yes.
know, we can go on and on. We're hitting the hour, Tom.
Yes, I
Um,
know, Sean. Yeah, we had also our injuries. We could speak about the technique. If you
yeah,
have a proper technique, and you not only follow blind somebody, but you use the technique how you want to use it on
Yeah,
a to be aware of it, you could prevent also the injuries. Think
yeah,
about that one. That's
correct.
also important. But technique is really, really wide. You can put many subjects in it, and
Yeah.
for all you need a certain of coordination and skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well, this was our episode on technique, right? The challenge of discipline and creativity, right? You need to practice, and that requires some discipline, but you also, create your own choices, which, requires a lot of creativity. And they goes hand in hand. In our belief, and if you don't agree, or if you agree, just let us know. We would love to do that. You will can find. Well, I will tell that later, Tom. I will ask you first if you have something closing comments, of course.
Of course, we have our podcast with creativity. We have that also, and art in dance. So we have many podcasts. Look in our list, and you will find connection. There are many crossovers in it, listeners. But if you have more interest in our opinion, so listen to that one. And it's not that we are sitting here and tell this right out of our thumb. I don't know if you say this also in English, but
Yeah, we actually say pull it out of our, but I can't say that in the
no, no,
podcast.
no. Yeah, but anyway, we study long time on it and a long research to come to that point to speak about these points. And if you think differently about technique, that's wonderful. This is also what we like and where we stand for. So let us know. And then hopefully we learn also something from you. That would be nice.
Yes. Yes. All right. Really good, Ton. So we'll see each other in our next episode. Not only Ton and me, but hopefully you too, as listeners and as viewers. If you view the podcast, it is called Dance Gems, Dance from a Different Perspective. Only for that reason alone, we try to give a little bit different sound than you might have heard at other places. It doesn't make us more right or less in the other ones less right. It's just giving you a different perspective. That's really what it is and meant to be. Right? Having said that, I say to you bye bye, Tom, and it was a pleasure as always. And I think we even learned a couple of things again as we talked through it. So that was great. I'll see you next time, Tom.
Yes, I see you also next time, Sean. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners.
This was another episode of Dance Jams with Ton Greten and Jean Dorf. Today we talked about technique, the challenge of discipline and creativity. I'm not sure if we had a lot of discipline in this episode. It was a bit chaotic and wild, but I liked it a lot. But hope you liked it too, by the way. And with that, I'll hope to see you next time, where you can, of course, always find us on. I'm going into the wrong direction with all my buttons. So let me, with all my
Put your
buttons.
magic stick over it, Sean.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, 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 sorry. Everything is now a mess here. The technique failed on me.
Yeah, yeah,
Spotify
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
dance.gems. That's where you can find us. Or you can find us on YouTube at tongreten/podcast. Or we have our own website, gem.dance podcast, where you also always can find the latest episodes, and you can, by the way, also find us nowadays
And the
on
Apple
Facebook,
podcast. We have also Sean, Apple
Apple,
one.
Facebook. So I
So,
have to
yeah.
update this slide, so
Yes,
you can
technically wise, you have to update it.
technically wise have to update this. Okay, so it was a kind of a funny ending of this podcast. We won't cut it out. We just leave it in. And with that, we say finally, bye bye.
Bye bye.